Hello, everybody. All right. Um. Yeah, I'm a little bit stressed out today, and the only reason I'm saying that is because. Um. Oh, hello, Gabriel. Nice to see you. Been a while since we've seen you. Yeah. So if I look a little irritated or something, I've been working on websites since I got up this morning, and now I have another technical problem I have to work through too. Um. Yeah, so last night we figured out that the websites had been hacked again. I spent last night working on it, spent this morning working on it, and then I'll have to do a little bit more work on that after this chat. But then to make matters worse, my Dropbox just got screwed up too. Um, so I have to take care of that today too. It reminds me of that meme that they have. It used to be, those ones. What I look like to that group, what I look like to my mom, what I look like to my friends, um, what I think I look like, and then there's another box at the bottom, what I really look like. And there was one for musicians, and it's funny, right? Because I think what the mom thinks the musicians are doing is drugs all the time. Um, and the image of the guy, what he thinks he looks like is like the rock star, you know. And then what he really looks like is the guy sitting at the computer working on websites and stuff like that. Um, and that image is that meme. I guess it's called a meme. That meme actually represents how pretty much accurate representation of my life, huh? I spend a lot of time working on computer issues. And it can be stressful. This is about the worst it's been in a while. Any questions to get started? I didn't check the website because I've been so busy with I'm not even sure people could have left any questions on the website. No, it doesn't look like anybody made any questions. Hello, Karen. Nice to see you. Karen says, "Hi, Eddie. How awful sorry you are having so much computer website trouble." You know what I read online? Well, thank you. What I read actually, I don't think it was me that read it. I think it was Pearl that read it. The company that we have as our host is sold to a company in India or something, or something like that. And now the security for our websites is not nearly as good as it used to be. I'm checking another source. Okay. So nope, no questions here either. So anyway, yes, apparently after they sold the company to a Indian group, the security went way down. Gabriel says, Eddie, can you please explain the different accents we can find in trumpet? Oh, that's one of my favorite topics. And let me give you a background story about this. I was working with a student, and we were working on some jazz stuff, and she was slurring correctly, because that's what I teach when we learn how to play jazz. The first thing we do for the swing is learn how to slur the right places, right? And she was slurring in the right spot, but I couldn't get her to do the accents. Then when I got her to do the accents, she wasn't slurring properly. Well, no, it's not the slur. I'm saying that wrong. It's so there's this thing in jazz when the students don't know what they're doing, right? They make the downbeats short. Ah, right? We don't for a jazz phrase. It should be a legato, right? But they go right. They do that short separation, and so after going back and forth, I could get her to do the accents right, but then when she's doing the accents right, she couldn't do. She was still playing Ricky Tick. Then we say, okay, don't play Ricky Tick. Now there's no accents. So I sat down with her and I asked point blank, I said, what are you doing physically to accent? Her answer got me going on a whole different, right? Her answer was, I'm tonguing harder. She had been taught that accenting is tonguing harder. So I got on Facebook and I asked all of my music friends, I said, is this a thing? Is this a thing where now today people are saying, okay, to accent, that's just tonguing harder? And a bunch of people said, is there another way? As if I'm some weirdo, right? Um, uh, so then I asked, I said, well, then how do you accent a slurred passage? If you have, if you have, if you have a slurred section with accented notes inside, how do you accent that? And they couldn't answer me. You know, I'm all for innovative changes on the trumpet. I'm all for that. I love that. Let's let's take things and improve them. That's not an improvement. That's not an improvement. First of all, uh, whether or not, okay, how am I saying this? If you can't accent on a slurred phrase, something's wrong. Okay, so that's not an improvement. I'm sorry. And if you can't answer the question about what do you do on a, a slurred phrase, then your pedagogy is flawed, right? So one of the women said she had the answer to all my questions. She said, we don't tongue the old way anymore because that was creating body tension. We don't want body tension in our trumpet playing. So instead of accenting from here, they're teaching them now to accent from here. And that's terrible. Accents come from the gut. Okay, now what we can do is combine that with the way we tongue. So that's how I would answer your question. And there's a wonderful book on this. When this happened with this woman on Facebook told me that I was just old school. That today we don't accent with our abdomen, we accent with our tongue. And I went through all of my books. You guys have seen my books, or at least some of them from the videos when I used to have the camera facing in that direction. I've got a lot of books. And I went systematically through all of them looking for anything about accents. And I found a beautiful section. Let me see if I can go find it. I'm trying to not get up like that much anymore, especially if I don't know for sure that the book is there. But this is an important thing, and I want to be able to answer your question. The best way to answer it is to get this book. So just be patient for a second. Okay, the book is called Advanced Method for Trumpet by Robert Grocock. Okay, and he talks about, and this is, by the way, this is how I was taught. This, what I'm reading here in this book, is exactly what I was taught. I remember it freaked me out. My very first trumpet teacher in El Paso, he wasn't my first teacher. My first teacher in El Paso kind of grossed me out because he wanted me to touch his belly as he accented. He wanted me to feel the accent. And I tell students this story, and I tell them, I'll never have you touch my belly when you, because that's actually kind of freaky. But yes, that said, I think it was a great experience to actually touch his belly and feel him accent the notes, because that's where the accent comes from. Okay, so this guy categorizes notes, categorizes accents, because you can have different kinds of accent. So he calls there's weight accents, there's the breath accent, which, in other words, a breath accent is an accent where you get the puff and there's no tongue, right? So anyway, so this is what it looks like. I'll let you guys maybe look for this. I don't think this book is in print anymore. I want to do a whole video on this one day. So he talks about very specific orchestral sections. If I'm not mistaken, this guy was in the Chicago Symphony way before all those other people, right? Before all the famous people. I think if I'm not mistaken, he's one of the Chicago guys. I might be wrong. He studied with Harry Glantz, went to Eastman, was in the Rochester Philharmonic. Looks like he went to DePaul. I'm just glancing over this. Maybe I'm wrong about the Chicago Symphony. He is listed in the Who's Who in the Midwest and Dictionary of International Biography. Anyway, this guy's not just some nobody. This is a real method book from the 60s, I think, 1968. And so anyway, let me summarize what he says. Hello, Barry. Hello, Jeffrey. Let me summarize what he says. You can, with your accent, you can combine different kinds of tongue with the accent. He never mentions once just accenting just your tongue, I don't think. But what you can have is like a sforzando, where you build up so much pressure behind the tongue, right? It's like almost like spitting the note out. Sforzando is a kind of accent. And but you can have a weighted accent where you tongue actually very lightly, but put some heavy accent action on the note. So the way I see I can't remember now the Brahms. I think it's playing cold. Let me try that again. But that's the kind of song that I would think of you're not going to tongue it real hard, but it needs weight on the notes, right? And I'm playing C trumpet notes on a B flat trumpet. I know that. the kind of song that needs to have that weighted accent, what he's talking about, which would be different if I played it with a more, still with the puff of air from here, but we're going to tongue also. Hear the difference with that. That's not the same kind of tongue. I mean, that's not the same kind of accent. That's still an accent, but the tongue is heavier. So the way we get the different styles of accent is not from here. The puff of air is still the same. The way we get those different styles is how hard are we tonguing at the beginning of the note. So I hope that makes sense. And I hope that answers your question. So the specific question was, Eddie, can you please explain the different accents we can find in the trumpet? So there's that first one, the weighted accent, which is a legato tongue, but with an accent from here. And then there's the regular accent, where you tongue like the second example I just gave, ta, 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 right? Then we have more into sforzando, where you tongue real hard, ta, ta, ta. All three of those come from the gut. And we shape it differently with our mouth, with our tongue. Anyway, this was a big deal to me because apparently a lot of the trumpet pedagogy today, a lot of what's being taught to trumpeters today is that you don't accent from down here. That's going to create body tension. Ooh, terrible body tension. So let's just throw musicality out the window. We don't want you to be stressed out, right? Let's throw all of that music stuff out the window so you don't have body tension. You know what? I think that body tension thing has become almost like a religion from the Song and Wind. It's a bastardization of what Arnold Jacobs taught. Seriously, it's a bastardization of what Arnold Jacobs taught. I really believe that. And I don't care who repeats me saying that, that whole thing to avoid body tension. You have to have body tension to play the trumpet. Right, Gabriel says right now, how can you play a wind instrument without tension? There's no such thing. You have to, it's the whole point. The whole mechanism for playing trumpet is that you have to have air against the resistance. That's going to create tension. What they should be saying is unnecessary tension, but they don't actually say that. And if you're going to take it so far that, hey, thou shalt not actually do real accents because that creates body tension, that's a really bizarre place. So Gabriel says maybe to relax as much, try to relax as much on neck and shoulder. That's not a thing either. You know what? One of my most popular articles was an article about body tension. And I basically, in that article, I say that body tension is not physical, it's mental. Body tension is a physical manifestation of conflicting thoughts. So, for example, the example I used in the article was someone who throws a ball, right? If your thought is, I'm going to throw the ball, everything happens physically in the way it should happen. But if your thought is, I'm going to throw the ball, well, maybe I'm not going to throw the ball, maybe I shouldn't throw the ball, then you're going to have these thoughts, what I'm doing right here, right now, is I'm flexing both sides of my arm. I'm flexing the muscles that would throw the ball and the muscles that would not throw the ball, that would hold the hand back. I'm flexing them both at the same time. The muscles on both sides of the arm are tense. That's body tension. If you're focused and you're throwing the ball, nothing's going to hold you back. It's when you have those other thoughts. What kind of thoughts? So we're talking about throwing a baseball, right? If you have thoughts that maybe I shouldn't throw that ball right now, maybe this is not the right time, or maybe I'm too late. There's those thoughts create impulses in the muscles that go in the opposite direction. That uncertainty. And the issue with body tension when we're playing trumpet is we're talking about the whole core section. Fighting against this side of us. We're pushing here and holding back here. So if we say to ourselves, relax the neck, relax the shoulders, if we say that to ourselves, what's the point of that? That's not musical. That's not musical. The way we fix body tension is to be singularly focused. Gabriel says, I can't understand this no tension thing or no mouthpiece pressure thing. You know, it's interesting you would point out that similarity, right? They are very similar. Karen says, would you demonstrate a couple measures of playing and then singing the same thing? I'm finding it's easier said than done. Okay, so let me pull something up. I'm only using this because it's here on the desk. Do, 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 dee, do, do, dee, ah, do. So if I'm practicing that, I'm going to be doing it back and forth just like that. Do, do, dee, ah, dee, do, do, dee, ah, do. So that's what it sounds like. So yes, the body tension thing is ridiculous. Ha, I just have to say that to end my stance on that. So the singing thing gets better the more you do it. So when you've only been doing it a few days or a few weeks, you try to sing it, you play it, you try to sing it, and you can tell because you're going back and forth. You can tell that you're not doing it because you've heard, playing it on the trumpet, you know what it sounds like. Then you sing and finger it, and it's like, that's not right. But because we keep going back, when you do that 10 times, right? Going back, doing it again, going back, doing it again, you're practicing this singing just as much as you're practicing your trumpet. And over time, it is going to make a big difference. So Gabriel says, is this a way to learn difficult passages? What do you is what a good way to learn? Are you talking about the singing? If you're talking about alternating between playing and singing and fingering, uh, okay. So we do this for everything. The only thing we don't do that on is the rudiments in the routine. Everything else, you should sing and finger. You play it, you sing and finger it. You play it, you should sing and finger it. If you play the whole piece, you go back again, now play the whole piece, sing and finger the whole piece. If you just play two measures, you play the two measures, sing and finger the two measures, play the two measures again, sing and finger the two measures. This is a huge part of developing as a trumpet player. That's extremely valuable, that practice. I've been doing that since, I don't know, about the late 80s is when I started doing that. It might have been more like 90. See, I didn't know about this is a implementation of rest as long as you play. There's an old rule that people used to follow. Rest as much as you play, or rest as long as you play. Um, singing and fingering during that time is a way to use that time instead of just wasting it. So you get the advantage of having the chops off, the horn off your chops for that amount of time, but you also get the advantage of using your mind during that time. So a lot of people say, when we talk about how long did somebody practice, and when they first start doing the rest as long as you play stuff, they think that an hour of practice is only really a half hour of practice because they didn't have the horn on your face. But if you're doing what I'm talking about, where you play, sing and finger, play, sing and finger, you're actually using your mind that whole time. It is actually a full hour of practice. Karen says, you mean checking email isn't a good way to rest? I've done that before, and recently too. You know, um, when I do that, it's usually on the routine. If I'm practicing music, I won't do that. But I've done that a lot with the routine. That's funny. Yeah, so the singing and fingering thing, it's a lot of people don't do it. I don't know. The trumpet. What I think it is I still think so many trumpet players are preoccupied with this idea that the chops come from the muscle here. That's not it. There's a threshold of how much chops we need, but after that, that's not what the problem is. The problem is in your mind. If you fix your mind, then you fix the trumpet. And when you sing and finger, you're working on your mind. You're training your ears. You're training your sense of rhythm. You're actually, the body doesn't know any difference between that and playing the horn. I shouldn't say your body. Your mind doesn't know the difference. You're still getting practice. So Gabriel says, what about moving the body while playing? I see a lot of players moving so much while playing. Is it correct? I got to tell you this story, and I don't mean this in a critical way. I think in the past it's come off as being critical. It wasn't a lesson; it was a group lesson. back when I thought I wanted to sing, and now I am singing, right? But um, I took a group lesson from a singer, and they made such a big deal about what you're supposed to do with your hands and stuff like that. And that's like the one thing I don't like about watching singers. I wish they would just stand there and sing, but they feel like they have to like tell you the story with their hand movements and all that stuff. And um, I find that actually kind of insulting, because what you're basically saying is that the audience is too ignorant to know what it is you're doing with the music. You need to like spell it out for them, right? But there's a lot of people, uh, I'm not going to say necessarily that they are wrong. And I've told my wife I don't do that moving around stuff, and she says, yes, you do. But I understand what you're saying. There's some people that move around a lot. And to me, it doesn't appeal to me. Is it right or wrong? I don't think you can say that, right? I don't think you can say one way is right and the other way is wrong. I don't think you can say that. But um, let's look at it philosophically. When you do that stuff, it sends a message to the audience that they're too musically ignorant to know what you're doing, and you need to help them out visually so that they can know what you're doing. With all that dancing around and all that stuff, the the the, the passionate movement, all that stuff, you're basically telling the audience they're too stupid to understand the music without it. Now, are they right? Or is the audience too stupid to know? So that's my first philosophical angle on that, right? Is is what you're saying to the audience is that they're too stupid. Now the second question is, are they too stupid? But the third thing I like to say with that, right, is not doing that stuff is also visual. To see a band that goofs around, uh, let's say we're talking about a big band, right? A big band that comes out, and there are big bands that do this. Everybody's like having fun and goofing around, and they do all this stuff. Okay, that's fine. That's their thing. What about the guys that come out and they're serious and bam, they get the job done? That's also visual. And that sends a different visual message. And some people will say, well, that's boring compared to those other guys that move around so much. But is it really? It's almost kind of impressive. It's sort of like the difference between a pink Cadillac and a Rolls Royce. You're going to tell me that a Rolls Royce isn't, a Rolls Royce is boring. You know, that's how I see it. That's this everybody's serious on the gig thing is visual too. And that sends a different message. It sends the message that we respect the audience enough to take this serious. So no, I don't think one way is right and the other way is wrong, right? I think really you want to match the right product to the right audience. If it's a party and everyone wants to have fun, then maybe not go with the guys that don't move. Maybe. That said, the first 15, 20 years of my career, that's what we were doing. We were serious on the gig and they were out there having fun. So Gabriel says violinists, also classical guys, move a lot, don't they? So that really depends on the person. I've seen some remarkable violinists, like the concert master and all that. Now, if you're talking about the soloist, a lot of times, like the people that stand out in front, a lot of times they have to do that to sell records and stuff. It's it, they have to dress in the long dresses and have the hairdo and all that stuff. That's all to sell albums. If you if you look at them in the recording studio, they're probably not doing all that stuff. And yes, I believe it sends a message to the audience that says you're too stupid to understand what I'm doing. That's the message it sends to the audience. You're too stupid. You can't just hear what I'm doing on the instrument. Your mind is so undeveloped musically that you can't even comprehend what I'm doing. So here, I'm going to move around for you so you can see this is the pretty section. This is the hard section, you know. That's the message it sends to the audience. Does it work? Yes, it works for them. So maybe the people really are that stupid. I don't like to approach it that way though. I hope that makes sense. Any other questions? Oh, excuse me. Wow, we've got a bunch of gigs coming up with my band. Very excited about that. Gabriel says, one more question, please. What about using mute during practice? It seems to me that after I've played with mute, I have better airflow. So I don't have a problem with using the mute. The problem I have with the mute is if you do it exclusively, if the only way you ever practice is with the mute, there are problems that come from that. Um, for me personally, I stopped practicing with a mute a long time ago. I would much rather, even if I'm in a hotel, and the truth is I don't practice. Where I got this from was when I lived in an apartment. When I used to live in an apartment and I knew there were people next door and downstairs, instead of playing with a mute, I would just play so soft. Most people run their TVs louder than that. And so for years when I was living in that apartment, I stopped practicing with the mute and I just started doing everything very, very softly instead of doing it um instead of doing it, loud on the mute. I think you get more benefit from playing really soft like that instead of trying to play with a mute like that. Karen says, I use the mute for the lip slurs almost always. Sean says, I took my mute out after our lesson. Yeah, that's a good thing, I think. Yeah, that was Clark. All right. Oh, man. Any other questions? Hello, Sean, by the way. Nice to see you. Oh, I've got so much to do today. Website stuff and all that. Ugh. Gabriel says, is there a mute used in jazz for effects? Are you talking about the plunger? So that would be one that I would call effects. Now, this is not the size plunger that they tell you to use. Oh man, I'm gonna have to warm up. So they tell you to get a bigger one. This is a sink plunger, and the one that so I think this is about 4 inches, and I think what they tell you to do is like a 6-inch plunger. But I've been playing on this for so long. I've had the same plunger for like 30 years. I'm not going to change it. I know how to play this, and I'm just going to keep it. What's the name? That we just call it a plunger. It's a plunger mute, but I actually got mine at a hardware store. You take the stick off and put it in your bag and take it with you. You know, the coolest plunger mute I ever saw was now I can't remember his name. I'm terrible with names. Some people think that makes me racist. If I remember, if I don't remember anyway, I'm not going to say that. So I want to say Sigmund. Actually, I have a thing on my website. Sydney, not Sid. I knew it started with the S sound. Sydney Mavundla. I did a jam session with him, and he's got a this was in South Africa. He's got a like a little cup thing that's woven, and he uses that as a plunger mute. And he told me he'd been using that for a long time, and it's beautiful. So Gabriel says, "Is it a jazz thing only?" Well, it started off that way, but if you play some modern compositions, they will include the plunger also in some of the modern stuff. Sean asks, "Did you write all the tunes on your recording Not So Distant Past?" Yes and no. Okay, so the written tunes are all my compositions. Yes, I can answer yes to that. There are a number of improvisations in there, and those weren't composed. Those were both of us, most of it's two of us improvising, right? So me and the piano and me and the bass improvising together. So there was nothing written there. So that's the when I say yes and no, the no part is when we're talking about the improvisation, there was nothing written at all. We just started playing. But yes, all the songs on there are original songs of mine. Karen says, plungers do come in different sizes. The one I bought was pretty big, and then I inherited a smaller one, which is easier. We used it on one piece in concert band. Yeah, see, so there is a classical use for it now with the more modern music. Now you also have, in a similar way, you have, and I don't know if mine has that. Let me see. I don't normally carry my stem. We call it the stem. If I do carry the stem, it's usually at the very bottom of my bag. Here's the stem. Woohoo! So the stem works a lot like a plunger. So let me get my Harmon. So the Harmon mute has a jazzy sound if you do not put the stem in. Okay, that's a nice, that's the, when you hear jazz on Harmon mute, it's without the stem. We put the stem in, it's a whole different sound. Oh, come on. Right? That's a different sound. Now, the reason I mentioned it is you can play that that stem like a plunger. Anyway, I don't remember that song. But yes, and you can also extend the stem. It has a different sound. Anyway, so when you talk about effects, that's another effect mute that you can talk about is the plunger with, I mean, not the plunger, the Harmon mute with the stem. And there's another thing you can do. I can't do it because my plunger is too small. There is a, I forgot what it's called. I think this is it. Nope, that's not it. Okay, I'm not finding it. So there's a small, it's like a small straight mute. Imagine if this was even smaller, like short down to here. And then you take you put it in, and it only comes this far, but then you put your plunger over that. In fact, that song I just played, the Sugar Blues or whatever it's called, was originally not on a Harmon mute. It was on this mute that's cut short, and you put the plunger over that. So anyway, hello, Enryu. He says, this is my first time in one of your streams. Okay, well, welcome. Nice to see you. I recently auditioned for all district for my state and the district. And before my audition, I had no trouble. Then he says, motivating myself to practice twice a day, but now it feels so challenging. Am I burned out? Do you have any tips for how to get past this? That's a good question. You know, I've had many periods in my career when I didn't feel like practicing. So the first thing I'm going to tell you is, how am I going to say this without sounding like a jerk? Um, I'm not being a jerk, okay? Don't take it that way. You shouldn't just do everything you feel like doing. And you shouldn't not do things just because you don't feel like it. And I know it's harder, but that's what life is all about. Right? So, and I know that's probably not the answer you want to hear, and I do have another answer to to add to that. But that's got to be the first answer: is don't let your feelings run the show. That's my first answer. Don't let your feelings run the show. You know you've got a job to do. It's time to go get it done. Okay, that's the first answer: is to not let it be feeling based. Learn to live a mature life that doesn't just do whatever you feel like doing. That's my first answer, okay? Now, and don't be offended like by that. I don't even know you, right? So, um, there's no reason to take offense at what I'm saying. Uh, I know that that this is a problem today. More specifically, people say, well, every generation has its own issues. Uh, Um, with all the social media and instant instant gratification for everything that we do, it's harder to live a mature life. It's not just your people your age. The only difference between people my age and people your age is that I've had practice living the other way. I still have to fight that same kind of not feeling like it. All of us have to fight that. Okay. So that's the first thing. Um, So he says, thank you for being straight up with me. My band teacher is too encouraging, and even when we sound bad, he tells us not to worry about it. I've needed someone to tell me to toughen up. well, that's, that doesn't mean you're not burnt out. And we do have, I just, I think I lost my ring in my bag. All right. So, I'll have to look for it. Um, there is, so you know what this reminds me of. I believe in approaching most problems from both sides, which is kind of weird, right? Because most people say no, the answer is this, and so in a lot of cases they're right, except that they're wrong too. And then people will say the opposite: no, you're wrong, the answer is this. And the truth is they're both right. So on the one hand, I will say that fundamentally you have to start living in a way that doesn't take feelings into account. You have to start, because there's certain things we have to do in life, and I don't talk about that. It's my policy to not tell people, get your life together. It's my policy to not cross that line. Um, but there's a lot of stuff that what we do in the trumpet world helps outside of the trumpet world. And if you can take trumpet, if you can take the practicing professionally enough, adult, more like an adult, more like a mature individual. If you can do that with your trumpet, you can do that with other stuff too. Okay, but now let's talk about how to make it not such a drag. You can add variety. Most of the time when we burn out, it's because we keep doing the same thing and not getting any better results. Don't do that. Practice something different. Give yourself a different objective. Don't um most of the time when we burn out, it's because we feel like we've reached some sort of plateau and there's nowhere else to go right now. You're just burning, spending time. What is it? Burning? There's an idiom I'm trying to use. Burning. Okay, it's lost. You're just wasting time. That's what it feels like. You're just wasting time. Nothing's happening. Well, get a different objective. Find yourself a different goal. I hope that makes sense. Spinning your wheels is another one. Yes, thank you, Karen. Karen says spinning your wheels. Spinning your wheels is another one. You just feel like you're pushing, nothing going anywhere. Okay? So by adding some variety to your practice time. Now, um I also will say this because a lot of times when people take music too seriously, they forget to have fun with it. And I tell my students, so I'll have a student that will come to me and I say, "What did you practice this week?" And they said, "Well, I did this, this, and that." And I'm like, that wasn't your assignment. They say, "Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't work on my assignment this week." And I'm I'm kind of okay with that. When I say kind of okay, you do that one week, you do that another week. If you do it every week, then we've got a problem, right? But if it happens every once in a while, and what you're doing with your time is playing stuff you want to play, playing stuff you enjoy playing, that's not wrong. There's people that tell you don't waste your practice time practicing what you already know. Um, I disagree with that. I greatly disagree with that. And where it comes down to is the difference in my philosophy, right? They have a philosophy of perfection. I have a philosophy of familiarity. And when you look at practicing music from a standpoint of perfection, you've finished working on the piece, you've mastered it. Time to move on. Don't waste your time continuing to work on something you've already perfected. My philosophy says great trumpet playing comes from familiarity, not perfection. And the more times you play that song, the better you're going to get at that song. And unless it's a song you're never ever going to play again, there's nothing wrong with playing the songs you like. And when I say never play it again, maybe you like it enough you'll play it next week again. So no, I think you have to have some time when you actually play the stuff you like to play. In fact, I tell my students almost jokingly that if you ever stop just picking up the horn and making sounds that having fun playing the trumpet, if you ever stop that, maybe consider quitting. I mean it kind of jokingly because I know most people wouldn't quit, right? But I mean, what's the point? What's the point in all the practice and all the drudgery and all that stuff if you're not enjoying the horn? Do stuff you like to do in your practice time. I hope that makes sense, right? I hope. So, on the one hand, you have to have that attitude, hey, man up. What did you call it? Straight up. What did you call it? Toughen up. That's what you called it. Um, yes, we need to toughen up. On the one hand, we need to toughen up. So no matter how boring it gets, no matter how much you feel like you're spinning your wheels, even no matter how depressed you are, none of that should matter ever. The job has to get done. You have things you got to do, get it done. But the flip side of that is you can do things to make it less of a drag. You can put some variety in your program, in your regime, whatever it is that you're practicing. Put some variety in that. Now, I don't mind plugging my books right now because one of the cool things, if you do the one range method using my books, there's variety built in. And for most people, you won't play the same exercises until a week later. So if you use my one range method, and then so the one range method is a method that, well, it's a strategy for working on your chops. If you use that strategy with my books, you have a bunch of exercises to rotate through, and you won't be playing the same stuff every day. And that breaks some of the monotony. It's actually kind of exciting, really, to practice that way. I used to practice the same stuff every day. Okay, I used to practice the same exercises at the same time every day because that's how I was taught. That I was taught that in order to be consistent, in order to play consistent on your horn, you had to be consistent in your practice, and that's actually true for certain kinds of players. Don't get me wrong. Most people don't need that. If you've got a certain kind of embouchure, you actually do have to practice the same way every single day. But it was a drag. I can tell you it was a drag. I don't want to say I hated practicing, but I hated my life at that time. you know, I shouldn't say it that sounds so extreme. It wasn't that extreme. Okay. But yeah, it was more of a drag. Let's put it this way, comparatively, it was a much more of a drag than what practice is for me and my students today. Hello, Seth. Nice to see you. Seth says, I'm currently trying to learn more about jazz to make myself a more versatile player. I've played some jazz before, but I'd like to become more proficient at it. What would you recommend I do? I would start with my 5 videos on my introduction to jazz. Okay, now it also depends on whether or not you mean jazz improvisation or just playing jazz parts. Because if all you want to do is play in a jazz band, then all you need to do is learn how to swing and learn how to read the music. And listen, 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 listen. Okay, so if you want to do the improv, then I would recommend that you go watch those videos. If you do Eddie Lewis, let me check this. If you search for Eddie Lewis jazz lesson, maybe let me put that in there. Yes, if you put Eddie Lewis jazz lesson, this video series comes up called the 5 Areas of Jazz Study. So I recommend you watch those videos. Karen says, and then when you add your music to the exercises, there is plenty to practice. Yes, that's what Karen's right. If you do my 50% rule, where half of your day is practice and half of your day is music, that will also help you with the burnout, because as long as you're learning a new piece of music, it's not that much of a drag anymore. So anyway, great questions, you guys. As always, we probably won't do this next week. I think I have a funeral next week. Ricky Diaz who I have some videos. If you look on YouTube, Eddie Lewis, Ricky Diaz, the videos will come up of me playing with Ricky Diaz. Oh, and there's a video comes up second of me playing with his band, playing high notes. That's so yeah. If you look up on YouTube, Eddie Lewis, Ricky Diaz, um, you'll get to hear what he sounds like. He passed away this week, and his funeral is next Friday. So um, I'll be going to that, and I'm not sure of the time. So we'll see if there's a Q and A next week or not. I'm not sure. And then the next month looks crazy. I might not be able to do much of these next month because I've got gigs all month. And I'll tell you guys some about that coming up. Okay. All right. Well, great to see you guys. God bless you. I'm glad you were able to hang out with me. And we'll see you next week, next time. Okay. Thank you very much.